These are like large pictures. How do you produce them? What is the material? What are your tools? How long do you work on them? How do they come into being?
Yeah, so I'm usually work on these large, big drawings on paper, and I work in a very intimate way. I put the paper around me in the studio and work with pencils, small pencil, pens, charcoal, ink, and work on the details and work at the same time on few drawings on a leather, jumping between the drawings all the time, and standing hours and hours and making those tiny details. I usually create a kind of this like very small space, so I surrounded by the drawings, and then there is like this dialogue between me, myself, my body, and the figures themselves, and this intimacy sometimes is just between me and one figure, sometimes between me and 5 figures.
Would you say, or maybe that's also part of my experience when I see your beautiful images, that that this form of intimacy that you were just describing as a dialogue between the pictures and the dialogue between you and the pictures, or a form of dance, is kind of repeated when one is standing in front of the picture. Almost, I would say, in a way that one is pushed into an intimate contact. You're almost too close, right? So they're like more than human size. They are like very large. So there is something like a force that draws you in, or that forces you to be very proximate to them. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and I noticed by the feedbacks I've got, that the viewer have the same kind of experience that I have in the studio. Game between being too close or sometimes being too far is something that I experience in my own body and in my own studio when I work on those paintings, drawings. And I think, and that's what I keep hearing, that the viewer also have this kind of the same experience. So yes, it's definitely my intentions. Yeah.
When we talk about your work in terms of intimacy, what does intimacy mean for you, or what is the value of intimacy in the context of your work?
It's a good question, because for me, intimacy was, or still, a way to experience myself, my identity, and my body. Means that when I started my transition towards being the woman I am, or the trans woman I am, was always to experience intimacy with men, to have sex with stranger men in order to understand my body and my gender. So it helped me to feel more as a woman when I just started. And definitely when I draw those drawings, and the way I approach to art in general is always this feeling of having kind of sex or kind of intimacy with the paper. So I'm almost touching the paper the way I'm touching another man in sex.
The way that you're talking about intimacy now is a way of also saying, if I understood you correctly, intimacy is something that changes over time, that can change also in relation to how our bodies are changing. You're interested in showing older people. The faces have wrinkles. They are very expressive. The expressiveness has something to do with their age. What is the importance of age in your art?
I would say something different. When I start drawing, it's not about expressing elderly people or older people. For me is to look at the facade of the person I'm painting, and to see the history and the story behind this skin and behind behind the body. I have this fear of getting older as a woman, because as a man I felt that I was more protected as a gay man, and suddenly as a trans woman I felt that I am more exposed to violence, exposed to being not visible in the sense of social aspect, women above some age. And I think those fears popped up in my drawing, so it's part of my confrontation with my body is also to confront also my fears and anxiety of not being, or being older, or of death in general. So at the same time I'm creating those drawings, creating bodies in this world, and as you said, like also creating my own body. In each moment I also creating the option of losing it at the same time. So this is the way I also feels about my transition. At the moment I started to ask questions about my gender, I felt I'm touching my body, I'm touching myself, I'm more exist in this world than I used to be, but at the same time I'm also exposed to the option that this body and myself will disappear.